Hello, people, and good morning. How's it going? So, this is something I've wanted to do for a while. Basically, just a plain old gush over cool stuff that the original Tactics Ogre did. Now, I want to say, right before getting into it here, that, yeah, in most cases, I tend to tell folks to go for the modded version over the original, simply because it helps to understand the mechanics of this game a lot easier. Now, that being said, the original has so much detail that we have to take some time here to appreciate it. Alright, so in no particular order, I'm going to be going over stuff I've seen as a recurring theme from different reviews people have done, different runs folks have done. I haven't seen everything out there, obviously, but, you know, just a few things that always seem to come to mind. So, first off, one thing I've seen come up in review after review is that, hey, in Chapter 2, there's so many different debuffs, and this runs throughout the entire game. You can't stop all of these debuffs, it's so annoying. Yes, here's the thing. No. You can become completely immune to pretty much every common debuff, just kind of looking through your initial crafting options. So, as much as the crafting system is definitely a bit janky, its overall intent is pretty interesting. Because if we just compare the initial shields here, something you see as a running theme is that the original, your base version of shields that the AI uses, they're typically balanced along the lines of something you'd expect from the original Tactics Ogre, where it's providing a decent amount of stats, but it's primarily focusing on either your hitting or defending potential. The upgraded versions, though, are all built around the general ideas of the remake. So, for example, and this is actually something that makes me think that the crafting system was added pretty late into the actual game here, but for example, just the fact that you have so many debuffs flying around, but these relatively common shields here all give you some way to become completely immune to one particular debuff, and this actually leads pretty well into another thing in a moment here. But yes, so poison, charm, sleep, stun, and silence, as well as a little bit after that you get slow. All of them are completely avoidable. And these are all common shields that most classes can use. The buckler for silence and the balder for slow are limited entirely to the light classes. So, for example, you've got your ninjas there, you've got your casters. They're going to be stuck to those two shields in particular. However, that covers what they need. Generally speaking, when it comes to slow, well, you don't want your light moving classes to get slowed down, and you don't want your casters getting silenced. So that does the job pretty well. Overall, stat-wise, they're actually comparable enough that you really don't necessarily need to always upgrade to the next one. Now, that said, this isn't the only category that did this. In fact, it's helmets that I think are oftentimes more interesting. Because it may seem strange, but yes, like it says right here, the bronze helmet. So this is actually low-key one of my favorite items in the game for this exact reason, but like it says, a Spangen helm made of bronze. Despite its weight, it provides little protection. Yes, it provides little intrinsic armor value, so your defense rating isn't very high off it. You know what it does give you? Okay, resist stun, fine. Okay, that's 5% extra chance to resist stun. You know what that is right there? That's known as the square menu that not many folks seem to be aware of for some reason. It's right in the middle of the screen. Admittedly, I think it might be something to do with the UI design, just because it's so dang busy, because I personally didn't realize that there was a square menu until like 2 years into playing this game. I know, what the hell. But at any rate, you know what those little 8s are all the way across the bottom? That is your first basic helmet giving you 8% damage resistance against every enemy type in the game. So yeah, despite what it says, this actually is. There's actually little interesting bonuses that are assigned to each different piece of equipment here, because just like shields, all of the helmets are meant to be used throughout the game. They've all got different roles, and despite the fact that the basic ones are just kind of going down your list of, you upgrade your armor, you upgrade your armor, you upgrade your armor. Okay, that's all well and good, but even your basic ones can be used completely into the end game. Yeah, this basic bronze helmet is definitely going to be one of your potentially better just across the board helmets. It may not necessarily stop damage threshold. Should probably explain that a little bit. So your defensive value is kind of like your damage threshold. But then, yeah, so it's easier to get past this thing's defense, but once it gets there, it does reduce it by quite a bit. That's kind of its role. You got your Boulder here for the casty types with its 5 int bonus, which is nothing to scoff at. You got your Wizard hats here with your silence proof, which, by the way, even the basic versions come with silence proof. So, like, the upgraded version's fantastic, but they did intend for casters to be unsilenceable with this thing. You got your Damask helm here, which resists sleep and just is generally your bulk option. You're going to be getting some of the best helmet defenses you can get off that thing. And here's another interesting one. This is actually later down the list, but I freaking love the worm scale helm. So here's the thing. This one will only make sense if you've played both Knight of Lotus and Ogre Battle 64. Because the worm scale helm is just an amazing pile of references to so many different things. So, for one thing, okay, its stats are about what you'd expect. Except for one. Why on earth does it have an intelligence bonus, you know? And it's only one. One intelligence will never make a difference. Well, I'll tell you why. Because there's only one game where you could ever actually cast magic in it, and that was Knight of Lotus. I'm like 99.9% certain that's the only reason that 1 point of int is there, where they're like, yeah, we saw that one, we liked it. They can't do that here, but that was pretty cool, right? So on top of that, if we go over to the crafting menu, this whole entire thing with this frickin' helmet is once again just going to be a big old OB64 reference. So if we go down to the helmets, you need an entirely separate crafting book to be able to even craft this thing. Not to mention you need to have access to all these rare materials. You need to have had all these extra materials to make the original helmet it's based off of in the first place. It's a whole long journey to get this thing, and you know why? Because that works us straight into our third reference, which actually comes in combination with this armor right here. So you can't really show it from this the screen in particular, but if you equip 3 pieces of the Dragon Slayer set right here, so like let's say we get the worm scale armor, we go ahead and put some worm scale, you know, let's get the helmet because it's just the sweetest version. And then we go ahead and we get the worm scale shield in here. Well, if you didn't know, and by the way, both of these will work for the job, but we'll go ahead and put the dragon scale because, you know, gotta have those Knight of Lotus references. Suddenly, you have a guy right here that's able to go and just carve a dragon in half with a frickin' knife. Which, by the way, this dagger right here, definitely my favorite in the game. It's basically the DDS from RuneScape. But yeah, actually, funnily enough, this weapon will tie into something a bit later. It is pretty much the only Earth item that isn't really nerfed. But anyway, so if you didn't know, 3 pieces of the of any dragon items, and this, I believe this includes the Dragon Fang. I know that this includes the Dragon Claws, so right over here, Dragon Claws and Dragon Blades. Additionally, one of the axes here, I think it was the Dragon Axe. It would stand to reason, as well as the Balamung will. I mean, a lot of the stuff that gives you a dragon bonus will potentially complete that dragon set. You really just need 3 pieces of any equipment that has either worm scale or dragon in the name for the most part. I remember there being some weird exceptions. I don't remember all of those off the moment because again, been playing One Vision so long that some of that stuff is a little bit lost in my mind. But yeah, so. Those 3 pieces, you put them together, and suddenly you have yourself a Dragoon. So those that didn't actually play through OB64, you had this whole long journey to be able to put together the armor, the helmet, and then you had to go fight a friggin' ghost dragon to go rip a sword out of its belly. And yeah. That right there. If you didn't know what the... God, there was even an emblem named after it in Knight of Lotus. But yeah, that's your whole journey to get your one and only Dragoon in OB64. So yeah, it's hilarious to me that they put all this extra effort in just to put that reference in there. Anyway, so next up in terms of cool design choices, we got, if we look at the more basic weapons, something I didn't realize for the longest time. But each of these weapon types, you may say, like, wait a minute, most of these bonuses are pretty worthless. Like, some of them are pretty solid. But you know what? these are actually a bit of foreshadowing, because every one of these, just kind of going down the list of almost any weapon type in the game, is basically telling you, here's what stats will scale off this thing, here's what stats you want to work on upgrading. By the way, I apologize. A little bit dry, still talking a little bit weird on this end. But for example, with your fists, they scale off of strength, so it's telling you that right away, and they're saying, hey, maybe work on your avoidance, maybe work on that health a little bit, just something to keep in mind. Then later on, you've potentially worked on that stuff, and they're like, hey, how about maybe working on your ability to hit stuff, maybe working that agility. Strength is still important, though, so you keep on going down that thing, and you're like, okay, so now you've managed to avoid stuff, you managed to hit stuff, maybe absorb some hits, maybe work on that vitality a little bit, yeah? So then you start working on that, and this kind of keeps on going. Like, I was doing a whole one-to-one comparison a little while ago, and then just sort of stopped partway through, because it just became pretty clear that for every point in the game, they're basically giving you stats for stuff that it seemed would be important at that part of the game. And yeah, another little interesting note, by the way, if you didn't know this, for different dagger types, there's only a few that casters can use. So you got your basic stickers just for basic self-defense and training up daggers in the first place. You got your boulders, which will come with a int bonus, so that's nice there. Then your Damask Bonus, which funnily enough also come with that same int bonus, as well as come with a nice little thing right here. I mean, weapon skill's nice, all that's nice, but this works us nicely into the fact that, you know what's really cool about everything the Damascus tier? Because I'm fairly certain whoever put this one together, like every single upgraded Damascus item, I'm about 99% certain it was the same guy who made Justice, the Just Ice attack in March of the Black Queen. Because every one of the upgraded Damask items, well, if you've ever looked at a picture of Damascus Steel, that mess is stunning. And yeah, sure enough, every single Damascus item, for whatever friggin' reason, has a stun effect. The one exception being the blowgun, because there was already a stunning blowgun. But yeah, it's just hilarious to me. I guarantee that's there for the sake of a pun. Please tell me if you can think of a better reason, because that is amazing. Like, I just love that so much. Alright. So, I will say, by the way, this is kind of later down the list, but just in terms of in terms of the cool stuff you can do with this game, and just in terms of the sheer amount of different equipment choices and whatever else, another complaint I've seen come up fairly often is like, oh, you gotta grind, you gotta specifically go for all the top gear and everything else. And let me show you something real quick if I can remember which quick save slot I put it into here. Because, you know what? A little while ago, this was years ago, this was before I even knew most of the mechanics of this game, I decided to see what would happen if you tried to do a run without any grinding, and essentially without using any skills whatsoever. So, yeah, no skills on anybody. Here we are in the post-game, and recently, see, I thought this save file was lost, and I was constantly thinking in the back of my mind, like, man, I really want to try that run again and go for the DLC and kind of see if the full DLC can be done that way. And I will say, having recently found the save file, I started playing around with it. It still holds up. In the DLC, it still holds up. And it's kind of shocking, because, yeah, you might be thinking of all those scenarios where, you know, you're dealing 1 damage or whatever else. There's ways around all of it. Just, like, absolutely friggin' all of it. There's ways around it. This may seem a little bit odd, considering how the game functions and everything, but it really doesn't require as much outright cheese as you may expect. I mean, I will say this particular run, I got a little bit carried away with this build right here. So spiked flails plus the wart dart blowgun. I mean, second upgraded flail or hammer type weapon in the game, and a blowgun you get in Chapter 2, and that's that's enough to carry you through the game. There's little kinks all over the place that you can potentially find and abuse and do stuff like that. So many potential options. So, which, by the way, funny note, just kind of throw this out there. If you've ever thought it was a little bit weird how the AI is running around like a blowgun and a knife, and it's like, why aren't you just using double attack or something? that once again falls into the funny way that the game was balanced, because it seems like a lot of the thoughts that they had were towards predicting a meta that they couldn't really predict. Obviously, folks figured out how to abuse longbows pretty darn well. I assume some of the like ultra endgame and like DLC and stuff like that probably wasn't as well tested. But a funny note is that, yeah, blowguns, absolutely acceptable as a second option against a double attack or something like that. Because look at those frickin' bonuses. I never even thought about it up until looking through it with a level 1 run. But holy crap, those bonuses are insane! That's literally, I believe, like the second highest dex bonus you can get in the game, plus a massive agility bonus, plus 10 luck, plus it can charm stuff. I mean, like, it's just insane. Not to mention you're insane to that particular debuff as well. So, theoretically, if you're running a blowgun build, you can be immune to 2 debuffs and potentially very highly resistant to another one before even considering any other proof skills that might be equipped. Just fun stuff there. Anyway, moving on, I just thought that was neat. So in terms of other stuff that can potentially be cheesed, one mechanic that I also find that folks aren't terribly aware of in a lot of cases, we'll see if we can find some items for them right here. But that would be how Strengthen, Breach, and Fear work. So the game actually starts you off with several of these right here, so the Dynast King's Mead. And it seems like a weird item at first, because in many cases you might have been doing 1 damage to something, you threw one of those on there, and it's like, wait a minute, why am I not doing damage yet? So the way that Breach and Strengthen and Fear work in this one, and actually part of the reason that there's so many nerfs attached to Terror Knights, is when you have Strengthen, you may have noticed sometimes you attach it to a character and they don't do any additional damage either. This is because of the usual metaphor I like to use is just a tank shell hitting a wall. Because if it hits and it's not getting past armor, so that's the defense or attack value comparison here. It's like right here. Your attack value is just how much defense it'll get past. Your defense value is how much you can defend. And in general, a lot of the end game, it's just kind of like mid to end game, they were trying to emulate history on this one. So defense got absolutely stacked. But anyway, so yeah, if you can get any points of damage through defense, suddenly strength will scale up like crazy. So for example, knives and stuff like that, like anything in the dagger tree, early on skill-wise, you won't see very much getting through. Later on, when you're getting increased skill, you'll start noticing it starts scaling up like just absolutely insane. And that's kind of the funny thing here. Because if you didn't know, I guess this is the 100% worst save file to show for this here. Let me go over to another one real quick. If you didn't know, every point in a particular skill upgrades your attack value by 4 and upgrades your accuracy by 3. This seems modest until you realize that, yeah, just that 1 + 4 bonus is sometimes enough to get past armor of its equivalent tier, at which point you upgrade it even more. Suddenly it's getting past it even more, until finally, by the very end here, you're running around like friggin' Ozma over here with her rank 8 swords and +3 augment. The way this math is coming along is because she has, like, let's say an ice blade here. It does 98. If we compare it to my guy over here, his hash comes in at an attack value of 116. However, over here, because she's getting this, here, let me go over to it right here. When it comes to swords, she is essentially over here getting +4 per rank, right? So anyway, so she's getting her +24 attack value off of that. Then over here, she's getting another 4 off of anatomy from most characters because she's over here fighting a human being. Over here, since these things are ice blades, she's getting another, another 12 just from augment ice. So suddenly, there's, what are we looking at? Another 16 plus 24, so she's getting +40 per each of these. So despite their initial attack value being lower than his, she's essentially throwing out hundreds per each one of these. Now, bear in mind, that damage is additionally scaling up with a 7% off that augment ice, plus 7% off of slash bonus there. So it's just, it gets crazy. It gets absolutely crazy, like to the point where this scaled up so hard she can one-shot the final boss. I didn't even have to do anything special with her character. Literally the only thing I did was get one extra Knight Commander mark, turn her into a ninja, and get a double attack, and then turn her right back to Knight Commander. So basically all of your numbers will end up scaling up off of stats, but as far as we're talking threshold mechanics, that hopefully explains some of it. Now you can kind of see why this game, why I call it a little bit of an overcomplicated monster hydra of systems, because there's so many things that can potentially interact, and actually that's another fun thing. Which, if you didn't know, every weapon type, if you're equipping that weapon type, you may have noticed your, sword guys don't get hit as hard by swords, and you might be thinking like, oh man, endgame swords must really suck or something. What is this? Well, or actually you may have noticed that your endgame archers are potentially not targeted by archers that often. Well, it works in reverse as a defensive skill for most of your skills. The exception being augment your elemental augments, which you specifically have to equip the attenuate skill to actually be able to make use of them that way. Alright, sorry, I had to get a little bit of a drink there. But yeah, so they have a damage and resistance bonus, like it says there. However, yeah, attenuate, how exactly is that one worded? Because I pretty much never use attenuate because it's kind of weird. But yeah, reduces its overall damage. So to increase your actual defensive threshold, you would use attenuate, but for general purpose resistance, that's when you would use just the regular skill. So in most cases, attenuate isn't really necessary. It's just kind of a fun thing to have. Now, okay, this could potentially bring us in a couple of different directions, but what I'd like to talk about is right here. So speaking of elements and interesting bonuses and things like that, this is one that I had absolutely no idea about until Rakes told me just a little bit ago. But there's two very interesting little hidden mechanics here, in which right here, as you see, this is a piece of jewelry with these little bonuses and things like that. There's, however, a few that actually have some different bonuses attached to them, and apparently, for whatever reason, strength bonuses or resistance bonuses kind of go as attack bonuses or something like that for only strength-based weapons. So as I understand, this was supposedly meant to counter how dominant some of the dex weapons are, by allowing an extra little damage bonus, scaling bonus for particular accessories and things like that. So due to the fact that I don't know very much about this, I won't elaborate or extrapolate too much on it, but just it's interesting to see there. Another thing that I also didn't notice until recently is the earrings. Like the ones that, it's generally the end game kind of comes down to, do you want your 30% bonus damage off of your elemental chokers, or do you potentially want your weapon bonuses off of off the earrings? Now, in most cases, objectively, the better choice is going to be your chokers, simply because by that point you have so many stats and things like that that you're probably going to get a far better return off them. However, an interesting thing to bring up is while the chokers are the offensive option, the earrings are definitely the defensive option, because that is a 30% reduction against all damage. So potentially, you could create a build that has terrible defense, but ends up scaling damage down so hard that, that they become nigh immortal. And I'm kind of curious right now just to see the highest bonus we can get off that, because the highest, let's see. We've got 8 so far. Can we do better? Alright. And I'm just looking for, like, overall bonuses, because obviously there's a lot of them that are going to be scaled towards particular things. Actually, this is not the save file to do this on. Which, by the way, let's take a quick little moment right here to take a look at the save file, because this is one that I was testing a theory on a couple of years ago. Because personally, I had a theory that at some point this game was supposed to have an XCOM-like Iron Man mode, where you would essentially have one save file, or I guess you could say a little bit like Monster Hunter as well, because it kind of does that. But basically that you would only have one save file, and that's the one that you would go through. And like that's the way that I've always absolutely loved playing this game, because it is entirely a game about, well, living with your choices, living with all kinds of potential weird compromises you had to make along the way, that kind of stuff. So an interesting note. What I did with this one is I decided that I would do an entire run of just interacting with whatever seemed cool at the time, whatever sort of seemed to be working at the time. So, for example, the party comp was all over the dang place. Had Felicia here as a second kind of backup main character. Had a little debuff archer ninja going on. I had 2 different casters, which, by the way, fun note, if you didn't know, screw it, well, you know what, I'm just going to keep on going on tangents forever. Main point of the setup here is, yeah, every time that something seemed effective, I would add it to the team, and then we would just move on from there. I would just use whatever equipment I came across, and then would only would never reload if something failed to craft, for example. So, like this right here, I had actually gotten 2 of the Tundra bows. They're not actually called Tundra bows in this one, are they? Anywho, had gotten 2 of the ice bows, and one of them broke. The other one created the Ixcamili's bow over here, which is arguably the best bow in the game. But yeah. Aside from that, in terms of the stuff that we actually ran across over the course of one entire playthrough, plus going back and worlding back to get characters, plus going through Coda 1 and 2 almost entirely. I was actually originally hoping to go through all of the DLC outright, but then Cashua got slapped off a cliff and died in the Palace of the Dead, so that was just kind of scuffed at that point. But yeah. So this was the kind of whole setup that we came across. We had some lizards that got worked in for their berserkers here. I tried running them as the other classes, but got a little bit, I kind of wanted berserkers on that one. Good old blind fusilier Haberim, as it always should be. Got Ozma here, you know, the walking helicopter blades, and and yeah, Murden, just like looking around wondering why he can never do damage. Which, by the way, funny note, the Holy Comet Whip actually does more than a lot of the two-handers in the game. That's always fun. Anyway, so yeah, everything that I ran into, I just tried to improve, to put into the team. Actually ran into these guys over here. Another little, if you didn't know, moment here. Ferrampa's actually filled with a bunch of beast units that are zombies that you can recruit with beast tamers. So, potentially really fun stuff there. I actually had these level 1 Cyclopses just to throw out as little distractions every now and then. Because, yeah, you can just have them repeatedly get shot and knocked out, and you just send them in naked. You can do the same thing with a lot of the zombie beast units. And, yeah, excellent distractions. Anyway, so yeah, I had a team of 3 Griffins. I found it funny that this one was called the Array. Just because around that time I was also playing around a whole bunch with Armored Core Another Age, and you got I think it was like Deus Irae or something. It was like Day of Wrath or whatever. Just this random boss that shows up out of nowhere as your last boss. And anyway, tangents. So yeah, I was playing around with all kinds of different stuff, trying not to get too overextended. And yeah, this is kind of what I ultimately ended up running into. Equipment-wise, we only ever ended up finding two special claws, nothing special on the daggers, crafted a few ice blades, I got the 2 plot swords in there as well, got a few of the two-handers as time went on. I believe the desert blades were almost entirely from re-recruiting units. Nothing special axe-wise. Created the hash, got the poleaxe as a drop later. Which, funny note, if you were curious why in OV the poleaxe got changed to an axe, because realistically they are closer to an axe. They're kind of like a more refined Dane axe in a way, where the actual thing is not necessarily the pole. It was originally with 2 L's, so P-O-L-L-A-X-E. But yeah, like the description says, though, its entire purpose was to create a hacking, crushing, and stabbing weapon in one thing. It was basically the Swiss Army knife of polearms. It was pretty cool. Anywho, moving on. So yeah, got 1 special hammer, nothing really special sword-wise, or Eastern sword-wise. Got a couple of, well, I guess literally just a couple of restoration staffs, and then the 1 special whip there. Got lucky with the second Ixcamili's bow actually doing its thing. Got a Tempest bow randomly, and then crafted these because it was fun having Haberim as a Fusilier. And then yeah, armor-wise, we ran into not very much. We found the light coat, we found the reeking armor. Those are probably the 2 most common ones you'll run into. Found some Architros mitts, neat. And the Earthen Greaves were probably the rarest thing that we came across with their, like, I love the idea behind this, because they're literally like, here's some boots, they're magnetic. They make people, they make, you can basically use the magnets on your boots to go make stuff miss. It's interesting logic, but anyway. And then I think shield-wise we didn't really... Yeah, we found a couple of dragon scales, that was about it. And then all the rest of this was all crafted except for the grease string, and yeah, this thing is super disappointing, but it's just fun to have it there. I think I was putting the grease string on a few units. Actually, I believe this this fairy had it for absolutely no reason other than I thought it would be funny. Actually, funnily enough, during this run I ended up getting 2 fairies, both somehow with the same name. Both of them died, so that wasn't really terribly optimal. Anyway, moving on here to other stuff. This was just kind of for the sake of interesting context here. One thing I have later on the list that I guess I'll bring up now, by the way, when it comes to Yuria, if you didn't know, her Songster's class is not really unique. You can technically also teach it to Pumpkinheads to somehow make it even worse, but, you know, it's there. Funnily enough, they actually, her class has some of the better magic gains in the game, despite the fact that she can't actually use them. So, that's a thing. That's fun. Alright, moving on to the next thing then. Oh, so another cool thing, actually I suppose while I have them on here, I suppose fitting background and all that. For those that didn't know, the Charm and Sleep spells, funnily enough, they're actually directionally scaled. So for example, if somebody tries to use Charm or Sleep on somebody, it is checking for line of sight to determine accuracy. I never would have even thought to check that in any way whatsoever, but yeah, that's what Rakes was saying the other day, that when he was going and rebalancing stuff, it's like, for some reason it was assigned a visual value, which I guess it's implied that they're hypnotizing them or something along those lines, but it's just, yeah, kind of a funny thing. I was trying to remember if, and unfortunately I didn't have any save files to double check this. I was trying to remember if the Witches and Knight of Lotus had to have line of sight for their fascination ability, because maybe that's what was going on there. I don't believe they did, and I don't believe the mermaids did either. Just in terms of like meditation, sleep moves, and whatever else. Anyway. Alright, so next up in terms of just cool stuff you might not have known, we got pretty much everything going on in Farampa. So I was mentioning earlier the zombeasts that you can get over there. I believe you can get dragons, cyclops. I believe you can get zombie octopi there as well. But yeah, all of them are pretty solid options. I really like using these cyclops in particular, because yeah, if you have one that's actually leveled up, you can potentially create a situation where you have a functionally immortal Terror Knight kind of situation. You may say, and actually this is another cool thing, you may say, wait a minute, but what if they get exercised? Well, that's the cool thing about having a caster that is that's functioning as your well, your unit that would be undead there. Because if you didn't know, you can actually resist exorcism. So I could be wrong on this. It's either mind or resistance that it ends up potentially getting reduced by, but either way, or actually evasion possibly. I'm not sure, but you can actually resist exorcism. It can fail, and in fact, if a unit is enough of a difference in stats, it can have like 2% chance to actually succeed. So theoretically, you can create a situation where you have a nigh-immortal, Terror Knight kind of situation. So to answer the question from earlier as to how on earth I would optimize a Cyclops to be a good spellcaster, that's how. Anyway, moving on here, because yeah, like if you don't, if potentially you don't have the option for them to actually cast anything, you have the greatest spell, and that spell is Rock. You just have them throw a boulder at something, and yeah, they can just cast Rock. Alright, next up in terms of neat stuff about Farampa, if you didn't know, I'm going to show right here partially, if you follow down this particular route, it is a straight line to the end of this particular one. Right at the very end, there are 3 Terror Knights that have a chance to drop meat items. So those are the ones that you get for going and selling off your beast units and stuff like that. So yeah, if you ever wanted to farm a bunch of meat items, don't go around recruiting stuff, just repeatedly do that map, get some archers, repeatedly snipe those 3 Terror Knights. There you go, you're good to go. You feel free to break the game. Alright, next up, In terms of early classes, it's that same route. If you go follow this path down the woods, you can get early access to a lot of things. So earliest rogues you can get in the game are going to be on this map right here. The fairies that are flying around. Once again, snipe the fairies, retreat. There you go. Get your rogue marks. Right over here, you've got swordmasters, you've got rogues, you've got ninjas, you've got dragoons, and Terror Knights. So you can get all of those early there as well. I believe Terror Knights are actually unlocked by the time you get here. Either way, if you feel like being a cheap bastard, I mean, go kill the Terror Knights for their meat. There we go. But yeah, it's the very final map on this path, by the way, that has those meat items. I believe their odds to drop are like 10, 15 something %, so it's not super common, but yeah, you can get every single type of meat item from those guys. I have no idea what they're doing there. It was definitely intentional, though. There's actually only 2 maps in the entire game where you can farm meat items. That's one of them. The other one is the very first fight of Coda 1, where you have the infinite pirates in the bay. Where, yeah, for some reason they also have a very high chance to drop them. However, they also will almost immediately go and claim those bags, and additionally, you don't really have the option to retreat until the plot tells you. So, this is generally going to be the best way to go. Alright. Next up, I just wanted to cover some more interesting references. Why don't we just go back to that other save file real quick. Right over this way. Over here, save file. There we go. I might have a few save files on this, is the thing. Alright. So personally, I feel like two-handers are some of the more interesting ones in terms of just background bonuses and how they built up their different stats and things like that. Because I gotta say, for the broadsword here, your standard two-hander, I believe this one was actually meant as yet another Berserk reference in this game. But yeah, if you didn't know, this +7 strength is some of the highest that you can get for quite a while. In fact, I don't believe any other two-hander up until the Balmung actually gives you +7 strength. So it is kind of insanely high. Granted, it's really low attack power. It does kind of mean that you're not necessarily going to want to be using it for that terribly long, but so long as you're able to get past damage threshold, that is a nice meaty bonus. Not to mention it's a nice bonus to your defense as well. Now, funny note is, if we're talking about side grades, every other type of sword here, so we got the Bastard Sword, the Viking Sword, and I believe there was one more here somewhere, that had a knockback bonus for one reason or another. So that's just kind of neat, because what it's actually starting off with here is the Viking Sword, which yeah, if you've ever played the Souls series, it basically is doing the whole like stabbing with a claymore thing. This is a poking sword that does knockback. I just thought it was a funny little touch there. That said, however, it's kind of consistently one-upped by the actual claymore here, along with the Zweihander, which yeah. Breach on hit, especially on Terror Knights, it's legitimately sensible to keep the Claymore +1 on a Terror Knight for quite a dang long time, because that breach, the chance of breach, if you didn't know, and dang it, I should have had this on the list too, 100% hit chance moves. So for example, Terrifying Impact, Mighty Strike, what have you, or for example the Mass True Strike ability, or not True Strike, but the Sure Strike ability from the soldiers. Yeah, 100% chance of the secondary debuff proccing. So for example, this right here, if you have, if you had like a Terror Knight in the front, you have them turn on Terrifying Impact, they will get a counter Fear Breach, which is like, that will completely decimate a unit. That the next thing that touches that guy, if they go to brush their teeth, their head will explode. Their defense has dropped that much. And I actually didn't cover what Fear does earlier. I was mentioning Breach and Strengthen. Those scale stuff up. Fear is the only thing in the game that, in the middle of a fight, can actually move your damage threshold up and down. So for a unit that's hit by it, their overall thresholds on everything are dropped. So their damage threshold falls down, their attack threshold falls down. So if you ever wondered why suddenly somebody getting hit with Fear went from like 100 to 2 damage, that's why. Because suddenly they're not getting past threshold anymore, they're not getting their bonuses anymore. They are screwed. So yeah, the Claymore +1 with Terrifying Impact is nutso in terms of how much it can ruin somebody. So yeah, and yeah, once again, Guaranteed hit stun chance potentially if using the Damask later. Granted, if we're talking Terror Knights, Lament of the Dead +2 off the Dark Headsman. It's really just the ultimate thing for them until you get the Ogre, which personally I pretty much never bother to get the Ogre, but it's arguably the best thing for them. Which actually brings us to our next note here. If we're talking about Ogre Blades, this the body snatch mechanic. So if you didn't know, you can basically do about 100 battles in a row to get a weapon, and then use it once to rename a monster unit. This is kind of a silly one, but yeah, if you didn't know, if you take any generic in the store, you name it to whatever you want, you give them an Ogre Blade, you can have them go body snatch a monster or something like that, you will keep all of the mental stats of the original unit. So for example, everything like intelligence, wisdom, or wisdom, intelligence, mind, resistance, as well as all of their skills. However, they will take all the physical stats and physical appearance and racial stuff from the class that they're taking on. Which, yeah, this thing is the only way that you can teach Canopus how to use a gun, for example, but, which, by the way, he can't use it himself. It's this whole long, convoluted process where you have to go get the thing, and then you get a generic, and then you teach him to use two-handers, as well as teaching him to use a fusel. I did have one case, actually, now that I think about it, where I tried to do that whole trick. I forgot to teach him fusels. Felt really stupid because I saved over it and lost the Ogre Blade in the process. And yeah, so at any rate, yeah, you just have him cannibalize a Birdman is the long and short of that particular one. But that all said, it should be noted that, yeah, with the body snatch mechanic, why this was changed to a phylactery in One Vision is simply because the Ogre Blade is a one-time use thing. You can only carry one at one time. And then as soon as you use the dang thing, you cannot recruit the unit that's still holding it. You basically they will have the Ogre Blade now. So yeah, you can't take it from them, you can't steal it from them, you can't kill them for it, you can't re-recruit them. It's a cool idea, but that's just mean. So yeah. So you can sacrifice that thing to suddenly name a griffin into butt, for example. So if you feel like naming a griffin into butt, then there you go. Alright, so next up, we gotta talk about some bows, I think. So I thought this was a really cool thing, because, okay, we can all agree that the, like, endgame magical rocket launchers over here are a bit overpowered. However, you know what's really cool? It's really, really cool. Okay, let's read all of these descriptions, shall we? It's like, okay, we got over here a bow plucked from the belly of a mage worm. This one said to have been used by a heaven general. This one was made out of an evil spirit. This one over here was, well, from an ancient kingdom in the desert, which, yeah, funnily enough, all of them are from that particular kingdom. A bow that fires explosive arrows with blasting powder and pitch. So yeah, literally the brimstone bow is the Rambo bow. That's not even a thing there. A bow belonging to the goddess of lightning strikes foes with lightning bolts. And yeah, both of these will do the same thing. A bow belonging to Hinella, the goddess of air, crafted from griffin and hippogriff feathers. So they're literally god weapons. But that's the funny thing, right? Because let's take a quick little peek here. What's the best thing that standard people come up with? A combination of hardened steel and flexible iron, extremely powerful and medium range. You got the siege bow here, comes with bound. More on that in a moment, because that is really dang cool, by the way. And so yeah, you got your Damask bow over here with its stun effect. Okay, awesome. You got this one over here. Basically, you got bows that were handed out by Cupids to go shoot at the sky and whatnot. Got this thing over here that's a bow found inside a glacial wall that freezes its targets on hit. But what do you realize here? This is, like, these bows, they will be blocked by heavy armor, they will be blocked by heavy shields. They are where humanity caps out. This is when all the divine crap starts happening. Lore-wise and historically, because they did try to do a bunch of interesting historical references with this game, all the bows that people make cap out right here. They cap out at 87 attack, they've got a lot of bonus damage on them, but that is not very much armor penetration. That said, where does humanity cap out with guns? 144. If you get to the crazy ones right here, actually, yeah, powerful flintlock rifle with a bayonet, 173. They're twice as powerful as the bows. But that's the thing. All of this is divine stuff. Like, that's the crazy part. The only reason that guns don't actually end up getting a higher, or actually 210, sorry. Yeah, percussion lock rifles go up to 210 attack here. The only reason the bows end up getting outscaled is because of literal divine intervention. This kind of blew my mind a little bit, because look at another interesting thing. All right, if we're comparing other stuff, these are all the lore-wise divine stuff. They got all these crazy bonuses on them. You got shackle on hit, for crap's sake, on this thing, like all that kind of crazy stuff. However, you look at the one that's right here. It's said to have made by the Desert Kingdom that you don't see anymore. It's looking real modest compared to the other ones. It doesn't have a racial bonus on it. It still has, you know, some general kind of alignment bonuses and things like that. But yeah, it's like it's fairly bare bones compared to the rest of them, which is just kind of interesting. Because yeah, you have only 2 here that people actually made. I mean, arguably this one was made with ghosts, so that's. Count that as you will, but I just found it interesting that, yeah, this one's literally just a grenade launcher. This one is this one was made by people, but it's got arguably higher attack but worse bonuses than all the rest of them. And yeah, it's just, I just found it kind of a neat thing that, yeah, guns actually, if we're talking about like whether it's realistic or not for bows to be flying past armor, the ones that are historically in here, they don't. And this is kind of a neat thing that even when I was doing the no skill run, that's like the no skill run might as well just be called a historical run, because that, like, at that point you are just basically going with historical norms of what would theoretically be going past certain armor. So like the siege bow, if somebody's coming in with full dragon scale and like all these heavy equipment pieces, this thing will completely bounce off their armor. Whereas, for example, something like a permafrost will happily start getting through it. So I just thought that was fun, but yeah. Oh dear God, I really hope my computer's not about to crash again, because this would be the 5th time I'm doing this. Anyway, so I thought that was neat. All right, next up, we're talking about pike and shot, actually. So while we're speaking of rifles and things, you know what you see introduced around the same time that muskets and guns and rimfires and stuff like that are introduced? Well, you suddenly see all of your spears going from 1 to 2 range to 2 to 3 range at the exact same time. And for like personally, this one kind of irritated me for a little while, because I didn't like getting used to a suddenly different weapon type. But you know what's really cool about this? So, okay, if for those that aren't like history nuts about that particular time, so the whole era where this game takes place and whatever else, around that time there was a strategy known as pike and shot that was being developed, where basically they started realizing, like, oh crap, bows and crossbows, pretty good. You know what's really good at scaring horses and being one hell of a deadly just wall of pain? Guns. Okay, cool, we need a lot of those. Oh wait, they take a while to reload. We need to keep them safe. We need a hell of a lot of spears in front of that. So that was basically the strategy. And if you ever just like look up any, you know, kind of late 15th century pictures and stuff like that, there's usually a whole lot of, you know, people in fancy hats holding out spears, you know, fancy hats that happen to look a hell of a lot like a certain class over here. You know, maybe if we go ahead and change you over to one of those. Where are you now? You know, fancy hats that happen to look a little bit like these ones is what I'm saying here. Fun little historical notes here. Which, granted, like, the female Fusiliers are kind of heckin' fancy compared to the ones that dudes had, which, fair enough. Do I not have any generic dudes in this team? Here we go. There we go, let's get you changed over. So this is actually not terribly unrealistic either. Because, yeah, you got your full kit here. Got the fancy hat with a feather on it. But yeah, powerful flintlock rifles and stuff like that. Later on, you know, proper muskets and things, and then pikes in front, and that was a pretty solid thing there. feel like I'm actually forgetting something real quick. Let me take a quick little peek to make sure, because I feel like I am definitely forgetting something here. I want to say it has something to do with the claws. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, so, fun little historical reference there. Actually, speaking of historical references and armor and things like that, while, once again, we go back to that same thing I was talking about originally, where the basic armors will actually, just kind of be like older RPGs and things like that, where it's just a basic defense upgrade. If you go to your upgraded versions, they will oftentimes be, well, they'll have their own unique role for most of the game. Like right here, the leather +1. Shockingly, this is actually going to be your best like lightweight archer armor up until the Brigandine. So yeah, up until the Brigandine, it's your best dex bonus and things like that. Your chainmail is actually really solid defense-wise. In fact, it's a little bit of an odd thing in the base, in the normal game, that the chain leggings and the chain body are literally the same stats. However, once you get to the +1 versions, they actually both combine into a pretty solid overall armor, giving you some of the best vitality bonus you can get at that point. If you get to your Balder stuff here, you get to your caster versions, so you're getting your intelligence bonuses off of everything. So, for example, if somebody were to, I don't know, want to make a heavy caster for whatever reason, like they had a Balder dagger with its +5, they went and they got their Balder shield here with its +5, they got their Balder armor with their +5, they got the leggings for the +5, they went and they got their int ring for the whatever the hell this one gives, 10. So yeah, suddenly you're running around with +30 intelligence all of a sudden. Like, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, is the thing. So yeah. That's kind of where that whole thing is. Then you start getting into the more specialized stuff, like Brigandine by itself is pretty solid for a lot of characters, because Dex is just a solid stat across the board. Gives you a little bit of an extra avoidance. Once you get into Damask, you start getting into your more strength-orientated defenses. Like, it's pretty nice. It's pretty dang nice. And then, yeah, like, Damask stays as your offensive option, while Wormscale kind of takes over as the tanky version, though it is kind of funny to see these two weigh the same thing somehow. Any dang ways, though. It's just kind of a fun little balance note there. Alright, next up, gotta talk about another thing that I just mentioned, which is that whole falling down of the Earth Kingdom and stuff like that, because they mentioned that, yeah, that's... The Desert Blade is from this fallen kingdom, and I want to say, yeah, this was originally something that you saw in, in the SNES version and stuff like that. Though I have to say, it comes in especially fun for this one, because I can't help but notice that with the exception of this dagger over here, pretty much every piece of equipment is gonna be, across the board, some of the worst in slot stuff. Like, Daedalus Knuckles are okay. I mean, it's interesting to see that they've got a luck bonus. Actually, these are pretty cool, I have to say. Like, these technically are human-made, not really anything divine-related. I'll get to that in a second. But I have to say, the mechanism that eviscerates target spine impact, what they're talking about is actually a 15 luck bonus. That one confused me for the longest time, because I was thinking it would do like a double hit or something like that, or a guaranteed crit or fear on hit or something. It's like, no, it's a 15 luck bonus. It's shockingly good, actually. But anyway, so what I found cool is, yeah, that one just scales off Earth just because that's how it's made. This one scales off Earth just because it's literally a dragon tooth. However, anything that's actually like divine related, like for example the actual god weapon for your like Earth Sword here, it gives you stop proof, but it's not actually very good. Not to mention it bizarrely gives you luck penalties and things like that. You got your swords over here. The Desert Blade is, well, a little bit subpar. It's actually worse than the Damask +1. It has an upgraded version that's, at least got stuff going on, which, by the way, fun note, I will get back to the Earth thing in just a sec, but fun note, a lot of your elemental swords specifically come with missile abilities, seemingly as a OP64 reference, because, yeah, elemental swords in OP64 gave them the ability to cast from the back row. It's not usually very practical in either case, but it's, if you ever thought, hey, that seems really friggin' random, that's why that's probably there. Anyway, so now we keep going to the other Earth options. It's like, okay, this one, another one, it's a little better, but again, it's just a piece of a dragon, so fine, that doesn't get to count. But again, we're just looking specifically for stuff that was made made divine related. So, like right here, you got the hash. It's arguably stronger than the Colmicrone. I mean, it's considered an upgraded version of the poleaxe, so I guess you could still argue people made on that one. Still relatively weak, especially considering when the Holy Lance gets its upgrade, it gets like potentially up to 23% bonus damage. This thing is sitting here at a modest 16. But again, seems kind of weak there. We go over to the hammers. We get over to the... you'd assume the Yggdrasil Gnarl would be that, but no, it's not that. We get over to the Sanchin. I mean, the Sanchin's pretty alright, I guess. I always thought this was dark. Oh well. So, I guess actually the Sanchin's kind of an exception. This might throw a wrench in that particular theory. But what I can't help but notice is, yeah, a lot of the Earth stuff, like even the Superior Brahma goes from Earth to Light. They're like, yeah, get that Earth crap out of here. But a lot of the Earth stuff seems weaker, and I wonder whether it was maybe it could have potentially been Matsuno throwing shade at OB64, but there's plenty of references to it, so it kind of makes me wonder if, due to the plot of OB64, they're just kind of all weakened from all the nonsense that happened there. I don't know. It's just a theory. It's one that I really, really want to be true. But anyway, moving on. Let's go ahead and talk about the Vagrant story stuff, because I thought this was pretty neat. So if you look at the standard allocations of armor and things... Whoa. Okay, something's going on with my dog. Anyway, if you look at the standard allocations of a lot of the armor and things like that, you get an interesting thing where it seems to want you to build your character to look like... Alright, sorry. I don't know why the dog's being all weird about the neighbors right now. But it seems to want you to build your character to look like a certain Vagrant story character. Which, fun note, if you didn't know, there's a hell of a lot of Vagrant story references in this one. You got Ashley's sword over here that they start off with. I personally would argue that the Kukri and Fandango should have changed places, because, I mean, the Fandango was kind of just a standard sword in that one. But either way, there you go. But for some reason, a lot of your leggings are stronger than their body counterpart until they're upgraded. So in a lot of cases you wind up running like gauntlets, pants, shield, and sword and stuff like that, which is, yeah, dudes running around bare-chested with like a shield, sword, and giant gauntlets and pants. Like, they barely tried on the pants. Anyway. And yeah, for those that weren't aware, every single finisher, well, almost every single finisher in the game is actually named after stuff from that game, so... Pretty much all of them are going to be some of the break arts, which was basically like finishers for that game, except as time went on, you just kind of got different ones, and you could kind of you could sacrifice some of your riskiness on your character in order to go do a hell of a lot of damage and things like that. All right, next up in terms of references, Marcia the Black Queen. If you didn't know, statues and Palace of the Dead, basically different versions of Marcia the Black Queen characters on that one. Alright, what else do we have on this list? Because I hear the kiddos getting up in the background, so I'm going to have to wrap this one up early. Oh, another cool thing. If you didn't know, there are other Zenobians in this game. You can actually only get them from Grimsby going over to Lufa Coast. You can actually recruit them in stores, I guess, technically. Well, good morning, kiddos. How's it going? Alright, but yeah, you can only get them going this way. But okay, there's a whole bunch of other stuff on this list, so I guess we're going to have to make this a part 2. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know if there's any other little stuff that you want to see covered in the next one. So you guys have a good one. Take care. This was fun to do. Alright, talk to you next time. Bye.